Of our beautiful Australian parrots like this one here for you to have a nice up close look at. Now you will have a good photo opportunity as the birds are flying around, but as they are flying around this afternoon, I'd just like to mention that we ask you not to reach out and try and touch any of the birds. One thing you'll notice they all have in common is a really sharp beak, and we don't want anybody to get bitten. Our first bird just heading off there is an eclectus parrot, and her name was Electra. Just a really quick look at her this afternoon. Now you may be familiar with our next bird in today's presentation because she was the official mascot of the Commonwealth Games. We're going to have a look at one of Australia's black cockatoos, and she is a red-tailed black cockatoo, and her name is Parrot. Now you may have noticed the rainbow lorikeets as well off to the side of the arena, and they have learnt to adapt to a changing environment. They're just feeding on a little bit of nectar over in the corner there. The red-tailed black cockatoo isn't quite so lucky because these birds haven't adapted to the changes that we've made to their environment, and one subspecies of red-tailed black cockatoo is endangered. So this is Karak. She was the official mascot of the Commonwealth Games last year, and the red-tailed black cockatoo is also featured on the registration sticker of your car. So there's 5 different subspecies of red-tailed black cockatoo here in Australia, and it's the southeastern subspecies that is endangered, and they're found around the border of Victoria and South Australia. So unlike some other parrots, such as the rainbow lorikeets, they don't use introduced plants as a food source. Hopefully Parrot is going to make her way down here and do some flying for us. There we go. So that subspecies of red-tailed black cockatoo is what we call a specialist feeder. Really fussy in what they'll eat, and will only eat the seeds, nuts and fruits of 2 or 3 trees. That is all they will eat. You can see a beautiful red tail as she flies across the arena as well as being specialised feeders. This bird is also pretty fussy in the types of trees that it likes to nest in. Now, like most parrots, red-tailed black cockatoos rely on tree hollows to nest and breeding, and their favourite tree for nesting in is a tree called the river redgum. Because they're such a big bird, red-tailed black cockatoos need really old trees to nest in, and sometimes they have to be as old as 300 years old before they create a suitable hollow. She lost you, Melissa. Before they create a suitable hollow for this bird. Unfortunately, the river redgum tree is one of our favourite trees that we like to chop down and use as firewood. Often people see those really old dead trees and think that they are not much use, where really they're an essential part of the survival of species such as this one here. There is a recovery program in place to help the red-tailed black cockatoo. There's currently as few as 700 of these birds left out there in the wild. He's over there, correct? It's having a bit of trouble today. I think it was the red t-shirt there. So there's only about 700 of these birds left, and there is a recovery program, so hopefully we'll see this beautiful bird survive into the future. You can help parrots out by simply planting indigenous plants in your own backyard, and that will provide parrots with an alternative food source. Now you won't attract a red-tailed black cockatoo to your backyard, but you may attract some other beautiful Australian parrots and be able to watch some really magnificent creatures on your own property. Alright, the red-tailed black cockatoo, as I mentioned, was a specialised feeder, and in comparison to our next bird, is in a bit of trouble in the wild. Our next bird to come out this afternoon is doing really well and does use introduced plants as a food source. So I'm going to hand you over to Michael, and he'll be out to talk about our next bird, who is a really excitable character, and I hope you enjoy meeting him. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to have a look at another 2 cockatoo species in the rest of the show. We've got over 350 species of parrot in Australia, so that's a large percentage that are found in the world. A lot of them are cockatoos. If you're wondering what the difference between the cockatoos and the rest of the parrots, the main difference is the crest on their head. You might be familiar with the white cockies, the sulphur-crested cockatoos, which are really common around Australia, as is the long-billed corella. They're a little bit more specialised, or they're more so found in a smaller area, but they are a very successful little Australian parrot. This is Kevin, everyone, and he's going to greet you. Are you going to say hello to everyone? Hi! Good boy, Kevin. You might be wondering where his crest is. He is a corella, and corellas have very modest little crests, but they still serve a very, very important purpose. What the crest is used for, off you go, do some flying for me, Kevin. Off you go, go on, good boy. What the crest is used for is to alert the rest of the flock of cockatoos that danger might be present. So whenever an animal feeds in a flock situation, there's usually a sentinel animal that sits up nice and high on a perch, looking for any danger, which may be a fox or a cat or even a person. In the case of cockatoos, what they'll do, if they do find that danger is approaching, they'll lift up their crest, give out an alert call to notify the rest of the group to be alert. So they use their crest when they're alerted by something, sometimes even when they're a little bit excited as well. Now this is really important with corellas because they feed down on the ground. What they're doing down on the ground is actually digging, just like this. Good boy, Kevin. They are called long-billed corellas for a very good reason. You can see that upper mandible, the top part of his beak, is absolutely huge. And they use it a little bit like we use a shovel. And what they'd be digging for are things like seeds and roots of different vegetations, also the occasional grub or bug. Native diet of the long-billed corella included native yams, so root vegetables. Now, a lot of their native habitat has been cleared and turned into farming land, and the corellas, unlike the red-tailed black cockatoo, are one of the species that has done quite well, even with the changes that we've made to the habitat. They've adapted to feed on our wheat crops and our barley crops, which unfortunately makes them a little bit of a pest sometimes. They have increased in numbers, and they certainly will sometimes cause damage to our crops. Now, unfortunately, people take pretty extreme action when it comes to that. They shoot and poison these birds, they end up with lots of dead birds. Good boy, Kevin. Which isn't the best situation, really. There certainly are alternatives to try and have cockatoos stop creating damage to crops. There certainly are measures to take, rather than the extreme measure of culling birds, of course. Hope you've enjoyed meeting Kevin. Let's give him a big round of applause. I'll send him on home. Off you go. Nice work, Kevin. We've got one more species to show you, and it's another quite successful species. It's a species called the galah. Galahs are cockatoos as well, if you didn't already know. They do have a little crest on their head. The other main feature of a cockatoo is an extremely powerful beak. All parrots have very, very sharp and strong beaks, but the strength in a cockatoo's bill is extreme, mainly for getting into things like nuts or fruit shells as well, and seeds, of course. This is Pip and Georges. Even though these guys are a very common bird, they do have a very, very important role to play in our presentation.